She just broke the ceiling.
Yeah, that's when you say something really.
We can do with that one. Okay. Ready? Yeah.
Let's get it. Real bad bitch from the west and the south, and I'm getting
What
this
do you know about 0121?
Southside, big girls, we from Zimbabwe. We get money and we don't pay our way.
You don't want none of this smoke. I'm telling you, you don't want none of this.
Can you say how you can easily be Priscilla?
I know. I can do this.
Today, we are joined by a powerhouse woman whose passion for people runs deeper than degrees. Although she does have plenty of these too, she's a doctor of clinical psychology, founder of Abantu Therapy, and a true champion for mental health in the Zimbabwean community. From Aston to UCLA to a doctorate, her journey is as impressive as it is inspiring.
Okay.
But beyond the titles, she's also a mum to a beautiful baby JoJo, a wife and a woman dedicated to breaking stigmas and creating safe spaces for healing. Let's give a big Hezvo Ka welcome to phenomenal Dr. Noreen.
Oh my gosh! What an intro!
Yeah.
My heart actually feels so warm. You guys did your research.
Absolutely. We've been watching you.
No, that was so nice. Thank you for.
Is it coming down? We can take it down.
Shall we take it down?
Yeah, let's take it down.
Yeah.
Because I don't want you guys to
Be uncomfortable.
Since we're all shumbas in here today, there's enough.
Oh, she's a shumba as well. She's
I love it. I love it.
Welcome. We're so
excited to have you
today.
It's so nice to be here. I've been listening to the pod from its inception.
Yeah.
To actually be invited to sit in, I feel like I've made it into the Hezvo Ka.
You made it.
Monumental. Yeah, you can add this now.
I love that. No, honestly, we've been watching you for a long time, and I loved when you came out with Abantu Therapy. Obviously, you've been doing like clinical psychology for a while now, and we've just been watching you grow. And when Abantu Therapy came up, I was like, amazing!
Wow, yeah.
And I can see the therapists you're employing as well. They're very much in tune with Abantu.
Absolutely.
And I just loved it. So yeah, we thought we would get you in, and we would talk about everything Dr. Noreen, basically.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah, let's get into it. So, can you tell us a bit about your background, all right, and how you grew up and how you got into the world of psychology?
Goodness, we really have to go through.
Yeah.
Let's go right back.
Like, did you know this is what you always wanted to do?
Do you know what? I feel like maybe when I was in my teens, that was sort of I guess when the idea of psychology started to float. I don't think from like my beginning story, I would say that's what I wanted to do. But I do think my making, like my early foundations, probably were leading
Pointing
in that
towards
direction.
Okay.
So get tangy from the beginning. Saka ndakazvarwa in Zimbabwe in Rusape. And yeah, I was raised in quite a big family, I would say. But you know, in Zim, it's proper communal raising.
Yes.
When they say village,
They
mean
mean
it.
it.
The village, maybe in like a westernized context, it's a little bit of a abstract idea for many. But culturally for us, like when we say communal raising or communal like upbringing, literally uncles, aunties, everybody. So I was raised in like, you know, family where, you know, we lived with aunties, uncles, cousins. And I think foundationally I was raised in a family, Nagogo, who was like working in like the council in Rusape. So she was always like the village
matriarch.
organizer. Matriarch, You know, sort of the person who gathered people together. Like she was always advocating, amplifying women's rights.
Oh, really?
Doing a lot of work in orphanages. She was getting funders, international funders, to come and like do fundraising projects and raise money for the community. I mean, for as young as I was, I remember my gogo would be going to like the Netherlands and Belgium.
Is that the same gogo who came?
Yes.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. She's
like
so
an
amazing.
international babe.
It's so nice to put a face to the action.
Yes.
I love that.
In fact, just, you know, her early story herself, I think having gone through her own hardships, she kind of transformed that pain into purpose and did a lot of work in communities, really bringing people together. So I remember when I was younger, my gogo was like one of the only households to have a phone, you know, in those days, like when they started putting in the like Magetsy and stuff. But people would, our sort of homestead became like the community hub. People would come with their troubles, with their issues, and I think there was always this sense of like, I'm part of a bigger something, even from a young age. So that was kind of fostered in me, this idea that I'm only one part of like a bigger purpose, bigger picture, and you grow up with this sense of like we conscience. It was not always about me, myself, and I. It was always, what's my cousin doing? What's my family doing? What are we doing together as a collective? Yeah. So when I look back at my early beginnings, I think it was kind of, those seeds were planted from young. And then I was a boarder, like I know, boarding school.
I'm jealous.
You know, Zim, it's like, I think when you talk about boarding school here, the idea of boarding is like, oh, you must be made of money. But in Zim, it was like a different story. I went to boarding from a very, very young age. Like I started boarding around age of 6. So very early.
I didn't even know you could get boarding for that year.
I mean, now they've changed it. Like when I left, they then changed the kind of entry age because I think because of
realised
it's too early.
Safety and safeguarding and all that.
But the thing is, I feel like in Zim as well, at the time, boarding schools were the superior, like as in, when I say superior, like the standard of education was really high. And, you know, when I look back at like some of the alumni from that school, many have gone on to do like amazing things because foundationally, like the curriculum, the discipline, parents like saw that as like the creme de la creme. But I think back then there was maybe a consciousness about the needs of a child and like, you know, the nurturing and, you know, it was all about education, best opportunities. I think many families made decisions like the best opportunities. But I want to mention the boarding school because I think that's the making of me as well.
Of course.
As in, it's like the formative years of your life when I think about, you know, sort of that survival mentality for startup, because if you don't protect your tag,
boarding school.
You guys are looking at you both.
I really wanted to do it, but I didn't want a chance. I remember my mom told me to send back to Zimbabwe after I had fights in school, and I'd be like, yeah, please do. Yeah. But no, it never happened. I really wanted to be a boarder as well because these two got to do it, and I heard the great stories that they went through, so it's just kind of similar now. No, for real, it was you know, that survival mentality, like it's
drown or swim.
Drown or swim.
Literally. So you learn to
fend
survive,
for yourself. You learn to be an independent somebody. You learn to like problem solve. You learn to like survive in a world sometimes that felt unsurvivable. But I think because a lot of people ask me like, did that not affect you away from your parents? And you know, sometimes the discipline methods also maybe if we look back with today's eyes, we'll be like, ooh,
is this borderline child abuse?
You know, some of the corporal punishment was just maybe a bit questionable by today's standards. But I think when people ask me, did that not really affect you? Like, how do you think about it now? I think the reason why perhaps it didn't have an imprint when maybe I look back and I'm like traumatized in the same sense is because it was a collective experience. Everyone got it.
Yeah.
So there wasn't
You
kind
weren't
of
singled
a
out.
singling
There's
out of
nothing
people.
better to bond you
Everyone
together
had
than
the
shared
same
Trauma bonding.
Yeah, no. If you're all late for lessons, may say
My
you are
Lord.
being queued up. You know, if you don't like air out your blankets in the morning, you are all you have to go and do duty and mop up the floors. So what I'm saying is that nobody was singled out or like isolated in that, which I think usually is a kind of predisposing factor for like later on onset trauma, because when you are singled out, I guess there's sort of maybe a belief system that you start developing that there's something wrong with me. But actually this was just, it was a discipline of everybody, and also it meant we survived through that together, you know, the comforting and and also the like intel. Don't do this.
Don't do
because
this
this matron is in the
Well,
corner here, and
yeah.
like you get
tell
into
each other,
trouble. So there was so much like a protection of each other, but also going through the hardships together. So I was in boarding school from age 6 to 12, and actually at 12 was quite a critical stage in my life. If you think about what happens at 12, you're kind of starting
puberty.
to like exactly, the hormones are kicking in. And it was quite a critical juncture in our life, because that's when my parents were thinking long term. You know, Zimbabwe's economy was starting to sort of deteriorate, and they were thinking long term, Kuti Ranavelu, what's the plan? Like, what do we want for them? And for them, education being like the pinnacle of like all opportunities in life, they thought it's time to kind of make the transition and move to the UK. And I remember when we were told, the way I was so tearful, because this was the age where we're now starting to apply for like secondary school boarding, and I'd applied for these schools, and I was like getting ready to
going
move.
there with,
like you know, the schools were like, you know, when you get to like Form 1, like you get to like have your own hair, like, you know, some of the schools like
you're not allowed to,
and some of the schools, like, you know, when you're fantasizing what the next stage will look like, because in your like sort of your immature and like young eyes, you're just looking at the next stage as like the destination. But then obviously the news came that we were coming to the UK, and then that's
How many siblings?
4. Well, sorry, 3, because
you're the fourth. It's so nice to hear, because now I can kind of gauge where the Abantu Therapy came from, because you grew up in like a certain like you said, your grandma's house became like a hub for like everybody to just come in. So it's always been something that you've seen in a sense. And then when you got the chance to do your own thing, you said, literally, I'm gonna go right back there.
Yeah, it was all about going back to my foundation, because I felt like in the therapy space, I guess it is still very much, if you think about the mainstream services, it's still very white, Eurocentric. And I wanted something that when people hear the name, even if they're not sort of Southern African, understand the meanings, which we can go through later, they can be like, oh, that's something that I've heard of before. And actually Abantu, which means people, is derived from Ubuntu, which is I am because we are.
See, I read it both ways.
Yeah, you do. You read it as well. Abantu, Ubuntu.
I read it as Ubuntu, and then sometimes it's Abantu.
Yeah. So exactly.
Ubuntu,
So it was the play on like both, like the recognition of Ubuntu. And to be honest, you're right. It goes back to that early story where it was kind of like, you're not a single person. You're always part of a bigger something, and that's what inspired the name. Because I was like, Abantu, and then when people go like, and you know, you have like companies calling, they're like, I'd like to inquire about your service with Abantu Therapy. I was like, wish they knew what they're saying. Like, so the power behind it. Because the minute you commission me to do the work, best believe I'm bringing all my people.
Period.
So when you're signing that contract, you're not understanding it's not just a name. Like it's also a philosophy. It's a people. It's a history. It's a legacy. And so
your grandma must be very proud of you.
Oh. Gosh, Gogo is just she's like the cornerstone. She's the matriarch and the roots from which, I mean, I guess I've grown from the ground that she laid for us. And and you guys will know she came and spent some
we
time
were watching the story.
I was watching.
Literally, the way people reacted to Gogo being here just made me feel so privileged that I get to like experience this with my grandma, because I guess a lot of people were almost sending me messages saying they're living vicariously because maybe they never got a chance to like have that level of bonding with their grandmothers.
Their grandmother, yeah.
You know, sometimes in life you don't realize some of those little privileges that we all have. And when you look at something that I took for granted, like I've always had my grandma around. It's not like a shared experience. Like so. Yeah, Gogo is when she came here. I think it was sort of a full circle, being able to bring her into my home, and you know, sort of show her literally I'm a product of her.
Even when she will like put on your cap and I was like
so cute.
And now when you explain
you
the whole
guys are
thing,
gonna have to
it
show
makes-
me these
makes
videos.
sense.
Where were you?
I don't know, child. I don't know.
You're following the wrong people.
Clearly.
Yeah, that was really nice. You know, and your mum as well.
Yes,
You're like your birth mum. She'll be so proud of you.
Absolutely.
Super
and,
proud.
You know, I'm just so fortunate to have had amazing like mother figures in my life. Those who've taken the role of mum, those who've stepped into mum role. It's been a real like collective effort to bring me where I am today, and I'm just so grateful for that. But that's a bit about my story from the beginning.
All right, so let's fast forward to Aston. How was that journey from Aston to UCL?
So earlier you guys asked about did I always know what I wanted to do. I think the psychology thing for me, I think it was maybe 15, 16 at that GCSE stage, you know, when you're making these choices about what you want to study. And actually, psychology was never the first thing I had in mind. I actually wanted to go down business and tech because I really enjoyed that at GCSE.
Interesting.
But from business to psychology, but the sixth form that I went to, at the time, it was like one of the, I want to say best, but maybe familiarity makes it feel like it's the best because my parents wanted us to just have that transition from school to sixth form, and the sixth form was like in the school. They wanted us to stay put. But the sixth form didn't offer business, tech, or any of the subjects that I wanted to do. And I remember just saying to my dad, "They don't do my subjects. Like, what does this mean? Do I have to find another college?" And he was like, "Why don't you see if there's anything else that you could try and see whether that will like work out for you." And I remember just choosing like psychology, sociology. I really loved English. I was like that babe that loved to write a good like piece, you know.
It's all working together now.
It's all making sense. And then I chose philosophy and ethics as well. And I just remember my first session in psychology A-level, and I just said, like,
this is a bit you.
This was it.
Oh, that's so fun.
It just felt like a confirmation. Like the minute we started like in our first sort of modules in A-level, we're thinking about psychopathology, basically talking about the causes of like psychological disorders. And one of the first ones we were learning about was schizophrenia, which I'd never heard about before. But when they started looking at it less from a medical lens and thinking about, you know, sort of early childhood trauma and talking about environments that people are raised in and also disadvantage, I was like,
this is interesting.
I was like, goodness, we all talk about medical, but they were thinking about actually people don't just develop psychopathology. It's often due to like the environment. They had me gripped, and then from there I just excelled in psychology. I did really well, really enjoyed it. And I remember also starting to research, like, what can I become, like, with psychology? Like, what are the options? And then I started researching clinical psychology. And at the time, they were like, basically, I don't want to toot my horn, but I was doing really well. Like, I was getting really high grades, and my
You
teacher,
better toot that horn, baby. Okay. I don't want to toot my horn. This is the jazz.
Okay, I guess what was happening, my teachers were saying I'm Oxbridge material. They wanted me to apply for Oxbridge. And I looked at the curriculum, I looked at the universities, the grades were fitting, but a lot of them were still very theoretically oriented. It was all about learning about experimental psychology, lab-based psychology. But for me, I knew I wanted to be a clinician. So I was like, what university can I go to that will allow me to have that strong theoretical like grounding, but also give me a chance to like practice? And when I was doing my research, there was only about 10 universities in the UK that offered like psychology undergrad with a placement, and Aston was one of them. So I applied to Aston and I got in because I'd applied to Birmingham and Aston. I didn't get into Bath, which was another one that offered a placement year. Met the grades, got into the uni, and that's how I got in, because it was maybe one of the only ones that had like a placement year. And at the time, I was kind of ahead of my time. So my parents were like, parents get familiar. It's not familiar. They don't nursing, social work. What else?
Doctor,
lawyer. But I remember them saying to me, they literally sat me down and said, Nyari, what is your 5-year plan? When I look back as a 17-year-old, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. What I wrote down has actually kind of happened, which is great. I told them I'm gonna do my degree 4 years, do a placement year. When I finish, I'll work for 3 years, do my masters, and then I'll go off and do a doctorate, which will be 3 years. I'll qualify. Literally, when I look back now,
there's power in words.
For
and
real.
especially writing.
But I think
down.
at the time I was so afraid of my own vision, and you know they say if you're not scared of your vision, it's not big enough. Every time I remember quivering, saying to my dad, "Second, they're now gone." You know, you speak with like quiet confidence. It's there on paper, but you don't know if it is attainable. But so I went to Aston, and Aston was probably what then set me off. It placed me in a very strong advantage, and I think I'd be saying this to anybody who wants to like get into the field. Getting that experience when you're at university, where you don't have other competing demands like having bills, or when you're a student, everyone's a little bit kind to you because they're like, oh, she's just a student. You're volunteering, everyone's really open to offering you opportunities. And I think for me, going to Aston so early, I had a chance to like be exposed to the psychology world. Like I managed to secure a job as an assistant psychologist. But so I was just saying, Aston was like an opportunity for me to like start getting that clinical experience, and also placed me in advantage because by the time I graduated, ahead of my peers, I already had 1 year in the bag of like clinical experience. And I was working on a brain injury rehabilitation unit.
Wow.
Which again is a very niche field.
I was just about to say that sounds very niche.
They were trusting me to do certain projects at such a young age, but I think it just set me off then to get more relevant clinical experience.
And that was unpaid internship.
We gotta call a spade a spade. It was unpaid, which maybe we can go into the ethics of that. But at the time, I'll be honest with you guys, I wasn't thinking about the money because I had student finance, I had bank of mom and dad. And I wasn't thinking about money because at the time you're thinking about learning. You're thinking I'm gaining something. It's something to prepare me for like my next stage. So it was a really good opportunity to like get that experience young.
I still remember Aston days, like it was the party. Do you remember your party? Your 21st? Was it your 21st?
Okay, I used to have a party every other month.
What?
21st, 23rd.
She said I could do it all. I'm a party girl and I'll be getting straight A's.
This is how we
don't try this at home.
Like through church, and then obviously the parties I had.
And they were packed.
Yeah, they were bad. My friends used to always say, used to have UN parties because I had people from every single. I mean,
because you're very sociable. Not the United Nations.
Because you're quite a sociable person.
How would you describe your therapeutic approach, and like why is storytelling or like the narrative like so central to your work?
Shall I start with saying a little bit about what I do?
Context
to my therapeutic approach.
Yeah.
So I'm a qualified clinical psychologist. I've been qualified now for the last 3 years. Basically, clinical psychologists are mental health professionals who are trained to to assess, treat, and diagnose mental health difficulties. Basically, we're specialists in understanding human behavior and psychological distress, and our role is to support people to basically achieve optimal mental well-being. And we recognize that people come to us with distress that is caused by a multitude of issues. It could be life changes, life transitions, it could be early life trauma, it could be sort of social factors, all these factors do create conditions in which people become distressed. For some people, they have distress that is manageable and tolerable. They're able to continue participating in day-to-day activities. But for others, that distress can manifest in them becoming mentally unwell. And we're talking about mentally unwell as people who go on to have diagnosable conditions, whether it's depression, anxiety, people might have PTSD, people have personality difficulties, that sort of thing. So I've been trained to basically work with people across the lifespan. So I can work as early as 5 years old all the way to like 80. So
that's
we are
amazing.
trained to work with any person presenting with psychological distress. So our training is very much about helping us to adapt to the person in the room. We have the tools, we have the techniques, but the techniques are designed to help you tailor it to the person in the room. So one of the main sort of tools that we have as psychologists is something called formulation. And formulation is basically about what's the story of the person. It goes beyond just a diagnosis, because if I said, Onet's got depression, that's a label that sticks on, but it doesn't tell me much more about who is Onet before the diagnosis. What's her story? What are the factors that have led her to this point? How does she make sense of her diagnosis? What is she doing to cope? What are her strengths? What resources does she have in her system? But also, what are the risks that are presenting for her? So what we do as psychologists is go beyond the label and understand all these factors that are basically contributing to the distress. Because when we have a clear narrative about what's causing the distress, we can also then start to target what the issues are. Because if I just say you have depression, maybe for some people the immediate remedy is I need to get tablets to fix this thing that's a problem. But psychologists are saying, there's a place for medication, there is a place for intervention, medical intervention, but for a lot of people there's also space for them to actually understand what contributed to this difficulty. Let's go back to the beginning and let's also skill you up to deal with those challenges. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what I do.
Very interesting.
So it's quite a way of thinking about people holistically, because I certainly think there is a place for us to think about medical intervention. When I talk about medical intervention, some people are so unwell sometimes in my therapy practice that to even talk about what's distressing them, they can't even engage because they're so distressed, they're so depressed, they're so anxious. At times they might need an intervention just to help them to find a bit of an even keel, so that I can start to do the work of them of actually talking through what brought them here in the first place. So that's a little bit about kind of what I do. In terms of my therapeutic model, which is what you asked, storytelling is so important to me, because I feel like if you look at just our cultures, we're orators. Like a lot of the stuff we know about our history usually was not written down.
Is that what orators mean? You
can't
can't use these big words now. I was like, orators. And adding that to the bank.
If you think about, like, we're very, we're very oratory. We speak about our stories, our history. Unfortunately, because of colonial history and like how information was recorded, we don't have archives. Sometimes we do,
and how it was destroyed
also destroyed. We could go into like the whole history around that, and there was an erasure, I think, that happened in the destroying of those stories. So because we're people who really value oral traditions, if you think about when we were younger, we'd be sat around like guys, stories,
they lost
legends. They were told.
We lost you.
You lost me.
Oh my goodness!
I was 5 when I came here.
Catch up.
Wow.
Okay, I'll let you as the
Tsuro na
eldest
gudo.
here.
Remember mama wanchitombotiudza nezva tsuro na gudo chichichi.
Wow.
Tashitata. Remember that? No? Oh girl. Wow.
Yeah, we lost her.
Carry on. I'm gonna.
Basically, it's like your folklore, like stories, like we're told.
No, I understand the context, but I'm not like I remember when. I don't.
I got you. But yeah, so I guess I'm just thinking about those stories being told and then they get transmitted to the next generation, they get passed down. But in storytelling, what we're also doing is creating a version of reality that we want. And everyone has a story about themselves. Yeah. And we either live that story, and sometimes it's a problem-saturated story. If you've been told you're not good enough, if you've been told you're a problem, or there's something
you had a problem
with you.
Okay.
Right? That is already like, that's a story that's really repeated. And actually those stories that people tell themselves actually create more distress, because people feel like they need to live according to that story. And what I try to do in my approach is to understand what story you've told yourself, where it's come from, but also what story would you rather tell about yourself, and what would that look like. Let's sort of create a version, an idea of a preferred identity.
Can I have your services after this podcast?
But yeah, I guess that's why I really like the storytelling method, because I think stories have the power to transform our identity, but also we can be creative. We can actually, even though you might not see that vision now, when I'm working with people, I actually ask them to visualize what that might look like, and what do we need to help you get there. If it's like, actually I can't get there because I have very low self-confidence, let's work on that as but we hold the vision alive always. And I also feel like sometimes it gives people the opportunity to like free themselves from like that script that's been passed down of like, well, my dad was like that, my mum was like that. Well, actually it can sort of end with you. In our family, but actually, why has that become the status quo? How can we start to like create a version of life that you prefer, but also gives you that sense of like ownership? Because sometimes we inherit control. Sometimes we feel like we inherit like a certain script, we have to live by it. But my approach is more about actually we can create a version of life together that is more in alignment with what you desire for yourself. And that I feel like normally draws people in, because it demedicalizes the problem. You know, we actually start to, if you imagine like weaving, you know, like when people are wefting something, you have to like needle things together, bring colors together to create like this picture. Some people come to me with just like very little, and my job is to try and pad it, like give them the tools, give them the techniques, give them the space, and by the end of the work they have this like beautifully laid, I don't know, throw.
Like where they can look back and be like, actually, I started Nika corner and it was only a crochet. You start with little corner, with little something. So yeah, that's what inspired my approach. I think that's very important in like also helping to destigmatize therapy in a sense, where people just think like, oh, why am I gonna go and just talk to somebody about my problems, about whatever. Like I think when you explain it that way, which is not an aspect that we get very often from clinical psychologists, to be like, you know, actually I'm not just sitting here trying to like point and be like, oh, and this is what's wrong with you and like, no, I want to understand you as a whole as much as you should want to understand yourself as well, you know. Absolutely. I think that's very important.
Which is a good segue into what I actually wanted to ask you. Do you think everybody should be in therapy? And are you in therapy?
I like to deconstruct a question, because the minute
let's unpack it.
So your question is, do you think everybody should be in
everybody who has the means, of course?
Yes. Yeah. I would pick up a word that stands up to me, which is the word should. Should implies a rule. It implies like a way to do things, which can create like a sense of like, this is the way to
the right way. Right? Yeah.
So what I would be maybe reframing is like, is therapy something that would be helpful for people to go to? Because therapy is a resource. Therapy is a space for us to better understand our inner world, and I think that for a lot of people, they go through life without understanding who they are, where they come from, their identity, and often that is the source of crisis for many people. And I think we've been given this wonderful resource, which is therapy, to give us an intimacy where we can get to know ourselves in a way that perhaps we can't do in our sort of interpersonal context with family, because usually there's shame, there's stigma, there's a sense of judgment that we might feel. And I think therapy is a powerful place to kind of destigmatize, take away that sting of shame, and actually get to confront the parts of us that we maybe hide.
Yeah.
And in an ideal world, I think everyone should be given an opportunity to go to therapy, but I like to think about what are also the conditions that are causing people to go to therapy, because we could have therapy as like something that's subscribed to everybody, but we also need to think about what are the sources of distress that are causing people to end up in therapy. Is there something about institutions, how we work, our family structures, you know, when you
and
start
it goes
thinking,
into a whole broader,
right, like as
that we
I
can
see therapy
fix.
as one amongst many other interventions we need, because I have people who might come to therapy and say they're being bullied at work and they want therapy to kind of cope with the bullying. And actually I'm quite a sort of I also resist in the sense of actually what's going on in your workplace there that is normalizing this culture. What needs to be done at that level also, as well as therapy, in conjunction. We also need to look at the systems that cause harm for people. And therapy is one such way to process that aftermath. But we also need to be leveling interventions at actually the systems that cause harm to people and get help there as well. So, in
the
a nutshell,
only reason I ask
what's
is
your-
because I feel like some people are like, they almost take it as like, if you say, oh, like maybe you should get therapy, or you talk about therapy, they're like, oh, well, I don't need therapy. Like,
yes,
there's nothing wrong with me.
yeah. And do you know what?
I haven't had anything super
Oliver,
traumatic happen to me.
And do you know what's funny? That I think that response comes from a misconception of what therapy is. Because of the way it's portrayed in the media, and that's actually something that came up in my doctoral thesis.
Yeah, darling.
Which I'm in the process of publishing. Like I did a thesis looking at black men's experience of therapy.
Yeah.
And a lot of them spoke about it's quite something, because I found it very revelatory about people's conceptions about therapy. And they talked about how when anybody mentions going to therapy, the automatic assumption is that you're a crazy person, there's something wrong with you. It's been sort of branded as this thing that people go to because there's something defective about them. And I think it's the way it's also portrayed in the media. If you look at like any shows that portray therapy, it's kind of it's
in a
not always been
negative
the most
light.
helpful portrayal of therapy. So I think when people respond and recoil, they think you're saying
there's something wrong with you.
Something
I mean,
wrong.
sometimes
get this fixed.
sometimes there is something that
Get
needs
this
attention.
Whatever this is needs to go into fixing.
I can name a few people who need your services.
But yeah, I think often that
Right back at you, honey.
I need it to be fair.
and that is what you do. Let's do it like a family.
Yeah.
Where's the
Unatabana na wangu no therapy wewe.
Oh my god. That would be really interesting.
That would be really
love
good.
to do
You know
that.
what? We should do that in the future. Actually, I think that would be really good for our family.
Guys, I don't know.
Like
about
it would be
that one.
after a lot of healing. I think it would be good.
I might break out in hives thinking about that.
I like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Therapy.
Yeah, it'd be good. I mean, there'll be tears, there'll be whatever, but we will work through it.
Yeah. Because
It's not gonna be
usually
easy.
this is where families is where like a lot
It
of distress
starts.
also starts. It's
Yeah.
about your family culture around emotions, how you deal with difficulties,
Yeah.
communicated or invisible or visible or invisible difficulties, but also sometimes the way we think about it in family therapy is that when you have a child or an individual in the family who's sort of presenting in a sense, let's say they're depressed or they're down or distressed, usually it's a symptom of family issues.
Yeah.
So there will be a child who externalizes the problem, which we see,
Yeah.
but it's usually a symptom of greater
Something-
dysfunction
yeah,
within
yeah,
the
yeah,
family,
yeah.
whether it's how we respond to people's emotional distress, whether we feel we have the capacity,
Yeah.
secrecy. There's so much that goes on within the family unit.
Yeah.
That once you've addressed that, usually you tend to see that people also then tend to feel better.
Yeah.
And this is a common issue that people come to me with, like, I'm doing this work with you therapeutically, but I'm still going back into the family. That actually exacerbates these issues. So what can you do to help them? But then they need to be receptive to getting the help.
Yeah.
And that is where usually problems are maintained. Because you can do the work of, like, addressing the way you think, the way you feel. But if you then go into, like, a context that essentially dismisses and invalidates.
Could, for example, let's say it's a drinking problem, and then your family, they are drinkers.
Right.
You know, and then they don't even support you in your decision to, like, you know.
So in that situation, therapeutically, in my work, it wouldn't be about trying to change your family members. It's about changing how you respond to their invalidation.
To their invalidation.
Does that make
That's
sense?
good.
Because actually we can't control our family members, the decisions they make. That is their responsibility. What I'm doing in therapy is supporting you to build a strong sense of who you are, what you stand for, the morals you want to stand, how to maintain respect for yourself, and being able to repeatedly communicate a message to your family, which means they respect your stance. Usually people are not able to do that part. That's what's hard. So we need to do that work.
Yeah.
I remember doing that before I went to Zim, because I was so, like, I was so anxious about it, because you know when you go to Zim, the first thing people will be like talking about is like, all based on your appearances. So I remember I even said that to my therapist, and they were like, look, at the end of the day, I can't control, and you can't control what other people are gonna do, but you can only control how you are going to react to it. Absolutely. What you're gonna say, and then go back into your bag of skills to deal with whatever you're kind of facing on that day.
Absolutely.
So I like that, because you kind of said the same thing.
That is exactly it, because I think we all want acceptance and validation of our family, and that is why we end up sort of dishonoring ourselves. Like, you might really stand up for something, but if your family are doing it or they have a certain culture, we all want to belong. Sometimes belonging means betraying our own values. So what therapy is skilling you to do is to maintain that sort of self-respect, to say in that situation, when people are responding to you, sort of using that broken record method, or broken record technique, as I say, of saying, it feels uncomfortable to say this to this family member right now, that we're not going to talk about my weight, we're not going to talk about the colour of my skin or how dark I am.
Battery change.
Oh,
Oh, that was really good.
hold it right there.
Ready? Yeah.
Let's get it.